Detective Story from 2007 is a Japanese film directed by none other than Takashi Miike himself. Miike is one of my favorite directors, even though I've only seen about a quarter of his films, but the man's made over 100 films so far, so yeah. Anyway, Detective Story is one that I found at a little mom and pop shop record store with a very, very small movie selection. The case was in horrible shape, but the disc looked great. I swapped out the cases when I got home, and it looks pretty good again besides this weird sticker on the insert artwork. It will never come off. It's there forever. I don't know why people would do this. I'm sure this is an old rental copy, but still, it just makes me sad. The film is about Raita, a businessman moving into his new apartment, when he meets his neighbor, a private eye named Raita. Quickly after their meeting, a string of strange murders begin taking place when dead bodies show up with organs missing. When the local police suspect the private eye, Raita, to be a potential suspect, he must clear his name and find the real killer along with getting businessman Raita caught up in the debacle as well. This is a pretty standard outing for Miike. The film is first and foremost a detective murder mystery with some elements of horror and humor. Miike has a ton of movies in his career, and while some are better than others, most carries a certain directorial flair that has made at least the ones I've watched, for the most part, pretty enjoyable. His gonzo frantic direction can really elevate a film beyond what its base is, and while there's moments of that, his style is more subtle, which I feel like the film needed more of to really stand out. Sure, there's moments where Miike peeks through from the editing to the camera work to some of the really gross and bloody horror elements, but they act as a peak in the film. A lot of the film is filled with bad acting and unconvincing dialogue that can lead to some of the mystery solving feeling stale. Most attempts at humor really didn't land for me, and honestly, a lot of the bumbling that the private eye Raita does comes off as frustrating after a while. The plot is really predictable as well. It's a pretty safe by the numbers murder mystery plot that even had a twist ending that I called from earlier on. Speaking of that twist, I personally didn't like it. Not because I was able to see it from a mile away, but because it doesn't make much sense in terms of the character, where it feels so forced rather than developed. It's not a satisfying twist. But with that being said, there are some things here I really enjoy. For one, this movie does have some generally gross moments. A lot of the artwork looks amazing, especially the big painting. It looks absolutely gruesome. I liked some of the jumpy editing and how Miike blocks some of his scenes. I also really enjoyed the ending in terms of the direction when it comes to how chaotic it gets. Sure, I didn't like the twist, but Miike at least amped it up enough to make it watchable. I also really liked some of the score, especially the opening piece, where it's this like horrorish droning with some random brass sections. In terms visually, Miike can be all over the place. Some of his films have amazing cinematographies, and others, like Detective Story, is clearly shot on a cheaper digital camera. However, I do think that look fits a little better with the story here. It looks older and probably cheaper than what it is, but it adds to the tone of the film. One thing I found weird was there's a scene with a dead body that was blurred, like it was censored blurred, not out of focus blur. Not sure what was up with that. Also, did the bathhouse scene really need to have a naked kid running around the scene through the whole time? It felt pretty unnecessary. There's also a scene that was pretty much ripped right out of Silence of the Lambs that could have easily been cut from the movie and not made any difference. It really didn't add much at all and was kind of just distracting due to how much it felt just lifted from that film. Like, yeah, you can copy homework, but don't make it too obvious. Overall though, I don't have much to say about this one, even though it is a Takashi Miike film. Last year Miike took home the gold with 13 Assassins being my favorite of the series, and Detective Story is no 13 Assassins. Like I said, this man's made over 100 films in his career so far, and with that much output, you're bound to have some misses. And while I don't think Detective Story is a complete miss, as it does offer up some good things, there's plenty from his filmography I'd definitely recommend over this, and I'm giving this one a 5.5 out of 10.